Welcome back to my Skincare 101. Today we are talking about moisturizers, another skincare fundamental. Now, when it comes to choosing a moisturizer, I think a lot of people, particularly when they're starting out, experience anxiety around the idea of moisturizing, particularly if you're one of the many who's prone to breaking out. So today, I want to share with you how you should go about picking the right moisturizer for you and share some of my favorite moisturizers from more than 20 years of practicing the art of skin. Now, if you're new to skincare or this channel, you might be asking, why do I need to moisturize? The reason is this: most things that we do in life leaves our skin dry. The simple act of showering, for instance, leaches away lipids that help us hold water in our skin. Sunshine takes away water. Central heating takes away water. Being out in the cold takes away water. Water is constantly evaporating away from the surface of our skin. So why do we need water in our skin? Well, the reality is that our skin is renewing itself on the top layer, the epidermis, forming a thin layer at the top called the stratum corneum, all the time. And that is turning over constantly. Now, for the enzymes that make that happen, our own natural exfoliation processes, if you will, to work properly, for that to happen smoothly so that you barely notice it's happening, the skin needs the right amount of water. So we need to help ourselves because the everyday act of cleansing, for instance, is constantly helping detract a little bit from our barrier function as part of the function of cleaning, and we need to put something back. So moisturizer allows us to put something back. Now, when it comes to choosing the right one, we have to think about the different types of moisturizing ingredients, and there are several buckets to think about. So the main one I want you to think about are the occlusive ingredients. Now, essentially, they form a water impermeable layer. Think of cling film covering, some food in the fridge on top of the skin that stops water from evaporating away for as long as that ingredient is in contact with the skin. Now, perhaps the most classic occlusive ingredient is petroleum, the stuff we find in Vaseline or Aquaphor if you're in the US. A greasy substance, there's no water getting through that, and it's a highly effective moisturizer. However, it's not so cosmetically pleasing. Many of you will know about a trend called slugging right now, which basically involves smothering yourself with a layer of Vaseline or a Vaseline-like substance. Pretty messy. It's going to get in your hair, it's going to wreck your blow dry, it's going to ruin your bed linen. And it can really feel a little bit unpleasant. So formulations have meant that we now use much more sophisticated ingredients that help occlude the surface of the skin, trapping water in there. So we have ingredients like shea butter, like squalene, things that feel much nicer on their skin. They have what we call cosmetic elegance, but still serve the same kind of function. So that's occlusives, a big and important bucket of ingredients when it comes to choosing a moisturizer. Next, we have something called humectants, and perhaps the most classic humectant is an ingredient called glycerin that many of you will know of. Now, all that means is it's attracting water into the skin. So occlusives are containing the water that's already in the skin. Humectants are attracting water molecules in like magnets, and that means they can attract it from the atmosphere. So if the air is humid, if you live in Hawaii, for instance, there's going to be lots of water for those molecules to capture and pull into the skin. However, if you live in a less humid environment, so you're in the UK in winter, that water attracting ability will be dragging water up from the deeper layers of the skin instead, because there's nothing to be attracted from the environment. So we have to be careful when we use humectants that we're also marrying them up with occlusives, because otherwise they will attract water up and then the drier air will pull the water out of the skin. So the effect net is to dehydrate the skin. So you need humectants in partnership with occlusives for the most part. Now, other types of humectants include ingredients like hyaluronic acid, which many of you will have heard of, which is naturally in our skin and is part of what gives our dermis its nice bouncy youthfulness. but it also works on the surface as a moisturizer. But don't be mistaken when you're considering investing in a pricey hyaluronic acid serum, for instance. Don't be thinking you're getting hyaluronic acid into that deeper layer of the skin. It's simply sitting on the surface, acting as a moisturizing ingredient. Lactic acid, another example of an alpha hydroxy acid, which also has exfoliation properties, but also acts as a humectant, pulling water into the skin. We then have emollients and we have barrier repair ingredients. Now, emollients often are also occlusives, ingredients that act to smooth and soften the surface, because ultimately what's a moisturizer doing? But it's basically smoothing the surface. Our skin cells, if you looked at them down the microscope, as our skin becomes drier, are essentially these little round, entities that the edges kind of curl up and start to be, you can kind of visualize what dry skin is. It's sort of these little cells curling up, and that's what creates roughness and texture. So with an emollient, you're smoothing those edges down, making everything look and feel better. Barrier repair ingredients are the last bucket that I want you to think of. And I think they're incredibly important because they help us undo some of the damage that happens through water exposure and cleansing. So ceramides are something we can replenish directly by using a topical product. And we can include an ingredient like niacinamide, which helps our skin make more of its own ceramides. A really common question is, can you use the same moisturizer in the morning as the evening? And I think the answer for a straightforward moisturizer that doesn't contain any hidden extra ingredients is absolutely. There are no fundamental differences in the needs of the skin in the morning versus the evening. However, the caveat to that is that for some individuals, the look and feel of their skin during the daytime might have different needs than that for nighttime. So at nighttime, you can be as greasy or as shiny as you like in a way, because you're not putting makeup on, you're not going out. Really, what you moisturize your skin with at night is about function. But during the day, how your skin looks after you moisturize impacts how the subsequent layers you apply to the skin work. So if you're putting SPF on top and then makeup on top, you may want a different finish with your moisturizer. Practically, if you're using a routine that contains active ingredients because you're trying to solve a problem, I often think it's worth having a good day's moisturizer and a bad day's moisturizer. So a bad day moisturizer is something richer, more nourishing for days when your skin is a little drier. Maybe you didn't sleep so well last night, and maybe your actives, you just started out and they're a little irritating and you want to neutralize that effect. A good day's moisturizer is when your skin is basically in better shape, it's more naturally hydrated, and you want something lighter. So having a range of hydration levels that you can customize according to your skin needs is really helpful. Then when it comes to moisturizers that contain additional functionalities, so for example, moisturizer that's got SPF in, the question is, do I use one of those? Do I stick with sunscreen on its own and use a separate moisturizer? And I suppose that then comes down to prioritization. So the way I look at it is this, that on the whole, the important part of that routine is that the sunscreen part is fixed. Now, most sunscreens will come in a vehicle. So that means that their base will have some degree of moisturizing properties. Now, for some, that might be a very rich moisturizing sunscreen. For others, they'll want a more matte finish sunscreen. So depending on how you like your sunscreen will in some ways dictate how you use a moisturizer, or indeed where you use a moisturizer. On the whole, SPFs that are in a moisturizer, I feel, are less likely to give you really good UVA protection. My advice generally is to stick to splitting out your moisturization and your sunscreen. So you pick the sunscreen that you need, and ideally that should be a high factor with good UVA protection. And then you customize what moisturizer you need where, depending on how that sunscreen sits on your skin. So for me, for instance, I'll use Flawless Daily Sunscreen all over, as one should, because sunscreen should be applied in an even layer all over. But I will use Flawless Moisturizer where I tend to be drier. So that's around my eyes, often around my mouth, because retinoids can make the chin a little dry. And that will be sufficient for me. So you work out what you need where. And I think with moisturizer, there is no imperative to apply the product all over your skin. You apply it where you need it. Now, when it comes to choosing a moisturizer, there is ultimately the moisturizer that works best for you because you like the way it feels and you like the finish it delivers on your skin. Somebody who's got very oily skin might prefer a more matte finish, whereas somebody with dry skin will want a more dewy finish. That's often the way it works out. But you can still find moisturizers with a different finish that contain those same important categories of moisturizing ingredients. So in terms of the ones that I use on a regular basis, if I'm looking for something that's lighter in texture for somebody who's got an oily T-zone, but perhaps, normal to dry cheeks, something I like to go for is the Avène Tolerance Extreme Emulsion, which is a squalene-based moisturizer. And that delivers a lovely finish on the skin. It's not too heavy and it lasts because the occlusive element in there means that it's not disappearing off the skin halfway through the day and leaving you dry for the rest of the day. I think that's really important. At the end of the day, if you're sitting in an office, central heating or the air conditioning is on, water is going to be escaping from your skin throughout your day. What you want is a moisturizer that lasts the distance. And then for those who have dry skin or like something richer and heavier for nighttime, particularly if you're using actives, particularly if you're starting out in winter, all those things can just increase the irritability of your skin. Then something denser again, like this moisturizer from Obagi, their Hydrate Luxe product, really feels substantial in the skin. You can feel the fact that the shea butter in there is really coating the skin, and that's stopping water from evaporating in a really meaningful way and really just locking water into the skin. So ultimately it comes down to personal preference, to the needs of your skin. But if you seek out moisturizers that are well balanced in terms of those different buckets of ingredients, you'll be supporting your skin well, nourishing it, supporting it, and ensuring it looks beautiful, because hydrated skin looks pretty. So I think a moisturizer is a skincare essential, and it is the element that you can use in a customized way based on where your skin is at, what's going on around you, and what you're using in conjunction with that moisturizer in terms of actives. I think some flexibility is good because the needs of your skin will change. The skin is a dynamic organ, and at different parts of the cycle, for example, your skin will have different hydration needs. Different seasons will dictate different needs. If you're flying or you're not sleeping, all of these things will impact the way the skin hangs on to water. So your moisturizer is there to support you, best friend, helping you ensure that your skin stays comfortable and your barrier stays intact. So I hope that's helped you understand what a moisturizer is doing for your skin and how you go about finding the right one for you. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and hit like so I know that you're enjoying this content. And join me next week when Skincare 101 goes into sunscreens.